Lady Laguna starting to come out after them now. Lady Laguna moved up, struck the front. The fillies and mares is all over. Lady Laguna wins it well. King of Sparta moved up at the 100 metres mark. Rose Quartz, baller for place chances. King of Sparta, king of the Gold Coast. A bounding closing out wider. Sovereign Fund, a bounding over the top. A bounding wins the 3-year-old filly.
Why you mad? Fix your face. Ain't my fault they all be jacking. Keep up.
It's Storm Boy in front, 100 metres left to run. Highness can't bring back the margin. Then Spy Wire, but it's all Storm Boy, and Storm Boy is too good for them in the 2-year-old. Storm Boy by 3.
And now on PG Podcast Network, it's time for the year-round Carnival with Vince Accardi and your host, Racetrack Ralphy.
And take two, it is Friday morning and we're rebooting this Gold Coast meeting, baby. Try and find some winners. We've had the deep dive that you heard last week. Our minds were, it was going to be a heavy track. It was so heavy, they called it off after 3 races. So these are the features. We've done the deep dive, and now it's just sort of like a top-up setup. Vince Accardi from Daily Sexuals, morning to you, mate.
Ralphy, how are you? Well, the good news is it just looks like it just continues. Race 4 becomes race 1, correct?
Yep, it's that simple.
Yeah.
But we're dealing with probably just slow ground. There's going to be a little bit of rain today. We've checked YR. It's got a soft track as of the morning, but it's a nice warm day, so we won't have that bottomless conditions where we look. I suppose the one thing was in those 3 races, it was savage fence on leader bias. So hopefully that's not the case, and it generally isn't when the track's soft. Is that right?
Yeah, so I guess the big thing's this, Ralph, is trying to bring some clarity around the actual track itself, like the quality of the ground itself. You know, where's that at? Because when you look at it, I know, unbelievable, the rain and all those problems, but when I sort of look at it and say, how much is it attributed to pure rain versus the actual health of the track is probably where I'm coming from more so than anything else. Because when I examine those 3 races, just to try and bring a little bit of clarity in about, like, okay, what actually happened in those 3 races data-wise, I know we didn't go over any of these, Ralphie, but you have a look at it. Race 1, the raw figures were minus 3.8. That's the winner. Go to race 2, it was minus 5.2, 1,200 metres.
So we're not talking about Warrnambool in May. In July.
No, and then we go, but then we go back to the 1,000. They've come up with plus 2.7 on the raws, and they're 2-year-olds. And the distance is correct. So I ask myself, it looks like there's part of the track in those 3 races had issues, and it was to do with the 600 approaching maybe up to the 300, 350 mark. And perhaps this is why we also had this scenario about how dominant is if you're in that lead part, because you're leading, then you get to the worst part of the track. And we've seen that 2-track play on other courses in the past, and then it quickens again. I mean, in that 1,000-metre race, Ralphie, that 3rd race, they've gone plus 1.8 last 400.
Wow.
So I'm just putting that there, that if you would have been looking at these 3 races, you wouldn't have been putting a line through it and saying the track is too wet. The track might have had issues. So they've had another week, pretty much. We're on good ground, I feel. I know it says slow, but I was looking at YR as well. They got a nice sunny day. I don't know when it's going to get bad. Maybe late tonight. They're on, maybe into Saturday will be very, very bad. But I do not expect anything like that. But I guess what we've got to do as form students and punters is we've got to keep a close eye. Is there going to be part of the track where it's got issues? Like we know when there's a lot of rain at a Caulfield, part of the track is off.
Yeah.
And then they fan wide, and if we're aware of it, we recalibrate for that. So I feel that this is probably far more important to be thinking about. when looking at wages. And of course, you have to be very, very nervous if you're wanting to be on a back marker based on what we've seen, because I don't feel the health of the track is going to dramatically change in 5 days.
And I suppose by extension, let's put on the table what our belief always is, and that is we're not urging people to to bet. We're independent. We just give our own thoughts, and more to the point, often the best way to make money is not to lose it. So there is a natural trepidation on what you've given from last week, and all we can do is give our thoughts race morning, but it's going to be a very much a proceed with caution mindset.
Well, you have to, Ralphy, because as a form student, what I notice is a lot of people, when they're betting and things like that, they do the work. I've been in the same boat in the years gone by at times. You do all the work. You feel like you're compelled to bet. But if you're a really good form student, when you've done all the work, you should be compelled not to bet if the tracks have got issues, because that's how you preserve your money and become more successful. Because the guys that are really successful, or the people, because it could be girls as well,
Yep,
they switch when they have those issues. They're not there saying, well, I've done all the work, I'll just keep playing. No, if you can't recognise the pattern and the horses that you want to participate on aren't where things most likely are going to be, then you should be moving on and waiting, in this case, to the next day. Because there's so many races. There's no shortage of us doing work, form. So what if you don't bet in 5 races or 7 races? Is it good for us as form students to do the work? Yes. Is it good for us to, look at who we want to peg? Absolutely, because that keeps us sharp and in tune. But when it comes to wagering, if things aren't right, keep your money in the pocket and look for the next outcome on another day.
Yeah, it's like the beach. If you didn't, don't worry if you miss a wave.
Yep, that's all.
Okay, so starting off with race 1, which for the race speed profiles that you got last week, we haven't adjusted anything, but this is the idea of the audio top up, obviously. So
yep.
that was race 4. I've got to say, Vince, so you had most of Edge. Tad Hauser was going to be nice and wet. He's a duck, but he was always going to be getting back. And then you had Miss Jolene, Lock Eagle, Skylab. The favourite for the race is Belvedere Boy. So maybe get a couple of your thoughts about position and running, and also Belvedere Boy that last week didn't make your top 4.
Well, the good news is this. It allows some good riders to be there, like Blake Shin, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is fantastic. Now, if you look at the setup of this particular horse, that last start performance over 2,100 metres makes a lot of sense. Minus 1.7 overall performance. On the race matrix, a 1.1 below. So trending slightly better than the performance. Then you look at the breakdown of the race. Half a length above benchmark first split time. Tagging the leader about 4 lengths. A subtle slowdown between the 8 and the 4 of about 0.8. And nice last 400 of plus 1.1, given that you've had to run at what I would consider to be a true speed from start to finish. Well, it is interesting, even though this horse has been up since September, it's only had 5 runs, and there was still a taper in the last 200 metres. Now, I feel the taper's come, and the taper is in the negative of around 1.7 lengths last 200 metres, I feel it's to do with the setup. You have a look at the setup, Ralphie. First up, minus 12.5 first split time. Second up, minus 12.5. Third up, 1,600 metres, minus 9. Fourth up, Rose Hill, 2,000 metres, minus 10. And mind you, that day, first time to 2,000 metres, is still travelling 7.6 lengths below benchmark between the 8 and the 4. And then when we look at what the horses had to do at its last start, massive movement up in pace. I actually feel this is one of the horses that got a bit of a gift not running last week and now running tonight. I really feel this horse has got a bit of a gift. That extra 5-6 days off, it should be right at its top. Now, the question is this. What can we expect from a performance? That's the challenge, because the the requirement to win the race or be competitive, you need to be about half length below benchmark. It's about a length off that, but on its best, and this is at a slightly different distance, is about 0.6, and it's done it on a couple of occasions. Now, on one of the runs at Rose Hill, I like it because the race matrix sort of solidified it, and I look at the early speed. There could have been room for more. I look at the ground conditions. The ground conditions that day, Ralphy, with a minus 7.4 raw, you know that's in the soft range, right?
Yep.
So this horse is going to be able to handle a bit of that. So I feel the horse you've tabled is an excellent horse to be considered. Now, you just like I'm looking at the platform. The question is this. You look at where it's been. If it can be in that position where it was last start, around 4 lengths from leader, excellent. But if it gets back 6, 7 lengths, then I'd be nervous. But I don't feel that's going to be the case. I feel this horse will be 4 lengths from the leader, maybe slightly more forward, but not really any further back, and could be a great way to open up the betting. What price is it, Ralphy?
Low threes.
Okay, so it's no big odds, but the reality is it probably deserves to be that price when I look at it from that perspective.
So it's one that's certainly been promoted from last week. Race 5 on the program is the Magic Millions, the big 2-year-old race here. It was a bit of a raffle last week. I assume it's still a bit of a raffle, but you had on top Invincible Woman. In fact, I've got to recalibrate as I'm speaking here because it was a different race, of course, last week. There it is, race 7. Invincible Woman from Icarian Dream, the playwright Galanero, O'Ole. My thoughts was it's going to suit O'Ole if it was going to suit Memo if it's playing like it was last week, and that's the favourite for the race from Invincible Woman, La Bella Boom. As I said, it's pretty open. Galanero's another one. We're waiting to see if Space Rider gets a run. Yeah,
well, geez, here's another one. It's a really interesting race. Damien Lane on Invincible Woman. When you look at the setup of this particular horse, and I guess the starting point's this, Ralphie. If we just take any sort of insight to what took place last week, and I know there was only 3 races, so we can't go crazy and have a real view of clarity and saying this is definitely what will happen. We don't really know exactly. Are we going to be dealt the same cards? And if you're not up on pace, you're going to be in trouble. Well, you know one thing's for sure. This horse is going to be in the right place. The extra 100 metres, it's going to be definitely in the right place. And with with Damien Lane on board, and I do like Lloyd Kennywell in terms of a trainer. I feel he's really good. The only question mark that I have for myself on the horse is that I probably had an expectation that maybe the race matrix would have just been a little bit more dominant than what it's showing. So the 1.5 for me, I can't sort of give it that double franking. It's only had the one start. But if it repeats that and looks like it's going to get the 1,200 metres, then of course it should be a horse that's going to be competitive.
All right, race 3, which was race 6 last week, most advantage, hard to say, Hedge, Zarastro, Samana. Looking at the early markets here, and just for clarity, we're recording this 6:20 Australian Eastern Standard Time. Samana is the favourite at $4 from Hard to Say and Hedged.
Okay, and you're saying from last week, what race was it? It was in race 6, isn't it?
Race 6 last week, yeah, the one where you had Hard to Say on top from Hedge, Zarastro and Samana.
So if we look at, let's say, Samana, for instance, it's had 97 days off. I mean, he's damn unbelievable, isn't he? with horses and the way he keeps up. And this is a testament in a lot of ways. Now, I was against this horse in many races, and maybe I might have been a little bit lucky because he's been able to prove on a number of other occasions that it really doesn't matter for him too much how much racing has. He just seems to understand what to do. So if this horse parades well, 97 days off, I'm taking a position that the horse is going to be pretty forward, right?
Yeah.
In terms of condition. Now, that first up run at Wyong, on adjusted figures, I scored at 3.8 lengths below benchmark. But oddly enough, on the race matrix, it's come up above benchmark. And
Sorry,
then when
is this Wyong 2023?
yeah,
Yep, before it won the Gold Coast at 1400. Yeah.
and well, you got to look at it. I'm saying for myself that that's the real first break.
Yep.
Now I know there was a 63-day break, but that was a different distance, right? That was 1400. This is 1200, and I just feel, well, if he's got it in that sort of shape, then the horse is going to run big, and you know this horse can be in a positive position, especially when it's had a bit of a freshen up. Now, if they don't and they're out the back, then that wouldn't be good.
No, that's true. But I suppose this is a horse that, from barrier 4, that's going to be advantageous because
absolutely,
hopefully, won't be too far back. Race 4 on the program tonight was a horse. It was the race that we did a bit of a deep dive into last week. It was the race. What was it last week? Yeah. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's it's got a. I'll go through the favourites, and it's wide open. Moravia and Charmstone are two of the favourites there, along with Redford.
Yeah. Well, Charmstone is an interesting runner, isn't it?
Yep.
Geez, Damien Lane, he's got a good book, hasn't he?
He could be filling up.
Well, he's got a big chance to fill up, hasn't he?
Yeah.
And I just sort of sit back and say, could this actually be an advantage for Charmstone? Just being on potentially better ground? I feel that possibly yes. And having, another 5-6 days, I don't believe that's going to have any impact on the horse, because just knowing how the Price Kent team, I've seen them operate with a number of horses that have got, especially the ones that have got some sort of talent, they're usually always in sharp condition and ready to go. So this 62 days, there should be no other reason other than that. And the 1400 metres, if we just go back to that Rose Hill run in September, Ralphy, I know the horse ran 5th that day, but that was a terrific run. It was a top 10 performance. It was 2.5 lengths above benchmark. Sure, the race matrix has probably trimmed that up a little bit, but what I'm confident of, this horse is genuinely a half above benchmark to the +2, 2.5 range horse, and can absolutely deliver at the 1400. That extra 5 or 6 days off should keep freshness on the side. I feel this horse is going to be in a forward position. I'm not saying it's going to be leading, but it's definitely, hopefully, Damien is positive from the 2 and puts himself forward of midfield, maybe 2 pairs back.
Well, one horse you say will be leading. I just want to touch on this again, because if it's playing like last week, Wyckoff Tiger's going to give a side at $16.
Oh, yeah, no question at all. This is a horse that, obviously I'm not really 100% sure why it is the price it is, because it deserves to be shorter. Now, class-wise, if you were just strictly talking class, maybe that's partially the reason why it's priced. But what this horse has done over the last 2 starts has been really fantastic. That 1350 run at Ipswich was +8 first section, Ralphie. It was +3.1 above between the 8 and the 4 before tanking out. Then goes to Eagle Farm, 21st of December, +3 early, +5.4 in the mid. Really tried to surge. And I feel another 5-6 day, particularly with this stable, impossible for that to be a negative. It's all going to come down if they get the right control through the first half of the race. If it's a massive overextension, then we know there's going to be vulnerability late, and that probably could work in, Damien's favour.
Race 5, which was race 8 last week. Now, again, trying to work out what we learned in those 3 races, and if there's issues, we're going to put on the table that Bahina, who was super, and we discussed its talent level last week. You wouldn't want to have raced last week the way that track was playing. So at least by tonight, we'll have clarity on how the track was playing. Can you make ground? Because that's her style, but she's a genuine talent. You had on the day Most Advantage, Bahina, Snitznova, Dance the Boom, Katoggio, Cosmic Fire, and the reverse. Vinny Katoggio could have run big the way that track was playing last week at $23. So race morning, what's your thoughts now with a week's clarity? And Tuileries, by the way, has been heavily back through the week.
Okay, well, I guess firstly, Timmy Clark, Katoggio, nice big price. Obviously, they're going to go forward.
Yeah.
Now, there could be an overextension up front, which could leave a level of vulnerability. Then we look at Tommy Berry on Bohemia, who's definitely got a level of capability. Yeah, I don't see that horse going forward, right? 14, they haven't really got any options, have they, Ralphy? Because it's all the way forward or back, isn't it?
Yep.
And if you're back, then you've got trouble, and that's not good news. And then when we look at the Snowden runner, Tuileries is the one you said that there's been good support for. Interesting, because the challenge will be with this horse, whilst it has been in a bit of a forward zone, like last two runs, Canterbury 2.7 lengths from the leader at the 800. Second up, Randwick, 1,300 metres, 1.7 lengths from the leader. It's pretty forward, but you look at the pace shape. 9.1 lengths below benchmark the horse was travelling at its last start at Randwick, and the lead speed was 7.4 below. And then the run before that, it was 6.5 below, where the race pace was 3.8. Now, of course, the Canterbury run, monster finish, really probably gave the big signal that I've got some talent, because the plus 7.2 last 400 gives you a little bit of that. But obviously, I would have been a lot more excited if that first section was like -1 or 2. And then when I looked at the Randwick run, again, excellent last 400 of +4, but definitely no speed through the first two sections. The horse is going to handle some give in the ground, but don't be... Well, see, here's the challenge with this horse. They're drawn wide. They're going to come across. So don't be surprised if the finish isn't there, because I feel this horse will have to burn a lot more fuel, because they're going to go forward and then all of a sudden they could be going benchmark +1 or 2. Wouldn't be no surprise, right? And therefore, there'll be no +7 late. So that would be a horse that I'd be very cautious with, just because there's support. Not everything lines up.
Race 6, which last week was, I think it was also race 6, was it? No, it was race 5. You made the good case for Miss Rumbini last week. Again, we're going to have some clarity about how the track will play. She won't be in the forward position from Bubba's Bay, Revolutionary Miss, Count Your Blessings, Infatuation. From last week, I guess the difference is that Blake Shin is now on Revolutionary Miss instead of Mark Zara. That's hardly missing anything, is it, Ben? So gun for gun. And the favourite for the race is pretty tight, Miss Rumbini at mid-3s. Again, how's this track going to play is obviously going to play a big part in her chances here.
Well, it will. And I mean, first, if we look at Miss Rumbini, on the technicals, you can see that this horse, you just run down that MFL column margin from the leader, and you can see closest 1.8 from the leader, furthest back about 3.5. So big chance, 1,300 metres, 41 days between runs. We've already touched on Big Price, Kent Jr., about how they can have their horses, very forward. So this horse is going to be in a beautiful position forward, drawn superbly, in my view, as well, 9. That means a high probability of not overextending through the first split. Now, mind you, when it did overextend at Sandown and it went +3.4, the horse still won. And at one was, I know there was a drop-off late, but still, just the way it did it, I thought was pretty good. And then I look at that last run at Ballarat, as we said, Ralphie, all sections above benchmark. It was the best performer of the day on Raws, and then on adjusted figures, it came off, but still top 10. And I just sort of sit back here and say that just got everything in its favour to be a genuine top 3 finisher and can handle some give in the ground.
All right, and the last race, which I think was going to be last race last week, there's a smallish field, and the top four are all pretty deep in the market. Hidden Wealth and Boom Talker mid threes, Yellow Brick around about $5, and Safrado mid fives. What's your thoughts race morning?
This is a good race.
Yeah.
I hope that they have all 7 races, because this would be a nice race. You know, for just me on a personal level, I'd like to look at this race because I feel there's a few horses that have got, you know, they've been showing some potential, and I just want to see if they go on to that next level. I mean, Yellow Brick being one of them. But Hidden Wealth, 27 days between runs. There are performances at Eagle Farm in the June timeframe where the horse was genuinely in that sort of benchmark +1 range. So I like that. The little bit of concern will be, okay, we're 1,300 metres, but if we look at that last run at Eagle Farm, it had to do a lot of work through the first 2 sections, Ralphy. +4.1 first section, +3.6 in the mid. It's not going to have that pressure of, you know, using so much fuel through the first 2 sections tonight. I feel it's going to be a lot more orderly, and big chance this horse could be travelling benchmark slightly below. If that happens, particularly with Tommy Berry, who's just brilliant when he can sit, right?
Yep.
We're going to see this horse finish very strong over 1,300 metres and over that last 300 or 400, and very dangerous. Yellow Brick, the other horse that I just feel this horse is a big riser. Now, the 1,300 metres is 100% short. This is why I'm really keen to see what this horse does. But I feel we've got a horse that's got plenty of talent, and we still have not seen it all. You look at those closing runs in November at Rosehill, 2.2 lengths above benchmark, top 4, 1,800 metres. Run before that, 1,500 metres, Ralphie, +2, 5th best performance of the day. The run before that, Eagle Farm in a listed race. Okay, benchmark, top 3. The horse is still climbing. And here we are. Now, maybe it might not climb much more with just 69 days off, but I feel the horse has already solidified itself in that +2 range and potential to trend higher, but maybe over more ground. So if this horse comes out and runs big or goes very close to winning, can't wait till it comes to Melbourne.
All right. So as always, we can only do our best on the information that's there. That's how we've tried to assess the day and trying to give you the extra information from last week, given how the track did play in those 3 races and how we expect things to pan out tonight. If you are having a play, best of luck, and hopefully the information helps.